Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to my channel, my Loverlies. If you've never been here before, thank you so much for clicking on my video. I am so happy you found me. I do so hope that you will like and subscribe before you leave. Become part of the Mama family. Mama's got your back, at least where makeup's concerned, and definitely when that makeup is cheap. Today we're talking about one of my absolute favorite brands. We are talking about Milani. We're talking about the new Daze of Disco palette. I am so excited. I absolutely adore Milani. I really like to keep up with their new palette releases just because I do think that they do eyeshadow really well. I think they do eyeshadow really well, especially for like really affordable, accessible drugstore makeup. I think they do it great. I always love the packaging. The formulas are always so nice. This one is no different. Again, this is the Daze of Disco palette. I think that the packaging on this palette is so pretty. Definitely the most graphic and most involved out of all of the Milani palettes that I have in my collection. I think it's really beautiful. I love this kind of graphic on the front. I love the little lightning bolts. I just think it is so pretty. You've got the disco ball on the front. It's just pretty to look at. I like the packaging. It's cardboard. It's not super heavy, but it doesn't feel super cheap either. It's just like a nice cardboard package. The color story for this is very neutral. A lot of the Milani palettes are, but this one is neutral with pops of pink and blue. So you have like this is a really beautiful deep cobalt and this super shiny baby sky blue. Then you've got this gorgeous like glittery pink. You also have a duochrome in here as well. So this shade right here is a beautiful duochrome. It's white. It's like an icy kind of white silver kind of color, but it's got a little bit of a shift of like a fuchsia, pinky, magenta kind of color. Very pretty. This silver in here is absolutely beautiful. The thing about Milani eyeshadow palettes is their shimmers are very glittery, and they're not super opaque. So a lot of them tend to be more like topper shades, and they're one of those formulas that you have to use wet in order to get any real payoff. The mattes, though, are always so beautifully pigmented. They blend effortlessly. They are very softly packed, though. So this is definitely not one of those eyeshadow palettes that you're just going to dig your brush into. You're going to gently pat, and you're going to pick up more than enough product for what you need to do. I think that there definitely is room for improvement, but overall it's a beautiful palette. Now I wanted to compare this palette to another palette from Milani, just to see how similar they are, and like I said, I do have all of the palettes that Milani has released, or at least released and have been available at Walmart. And I think I have, how many do I have in total? Like 7. I have 7 in total. But the one that I think is the most similar to this palette is the Milani Gilded Twilight. And even then, it's not very similar. So I do want to hold these up next to each other so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So maybe, you know, if you have the Gilded Twilight, you don't necessarily need to pick up the Daze of Disco. But I do think that the color stories are different enough that it would warrant having both of these. So this is the Gilded Twilight. This is a Gilded Twilight, and this is Disco Daze. Now you can see they have switched up the format of their palettes. Whereas they used to be 15-pan palettes, now they're only 3, 6, 9, 12-pan palettes. So they've kind of taken out a row of shadows, which I don't mind, because again, there tends to be a little bit of overlap, and some of the shades are super similar. So I think a more edited color story, it benefits from being edited just a little bit more. But this is the palette that I thought looked the most similar to Daze of Disco, and even then there's not very much overlap. I think the overall kind of vibe is similar, but there's no pinks in here. You do have the slight blues here, and then you've also got some of like the silvery taupes and kind of like the overall cool tone vibe. But again, I don't think that they're exact dupes. So I do think that there could be room in your collection for both of these palettes. But if you're anything like me and you own more than one Milani palette, I really think that you probably already have all of these shades here. I did go through this palette. I did swatch everything. I used it on my eye. And out of this entire palette, I didn't find anything that was super special. I didn't find anything, though I love the packaging and it's super adorable. If you already have a collection, if you already own some Milani shadows, I really don't think that this one is super, super necessary. There's really nothing special in here that really kind of called to me. Also, they skipped the mirror. So whereas where they've kind of taken out a row of shadows, they've also removed the mirror. As you can see in the other palettes, there's a really, really gorgeous mirror. It makes it feel heavier. It makes it feel a little bit more worth your while. You know, maybe not worth your while, but just a little bit more expensive kind of luxe feeling. This feels much, much lighter, not quite as substantial in the hand. And also, it's the same price. So I know that they're adjusting for inflation and things like that, but I kind of think that the value isn't quite there. So if you want to compare the pan sizes, because again, that's where we're going to get a little bit of our value. So if you compare the pan sizes in the two palettes, the pan sizes in the newer palette they're bigger, but again, I think you're getting pretty much the same amount of product because again, they've taken out that row of shadows. Overall, I like the packaging with the mirror a little bit better, especially because these are great for travel. They're super compact. They're super compact, and they're actually pretty sturdy palettes as well. They're pretty well insulated. So it makes these great for traveling. I have taken these traveling with me a couple times and they've done great. But one of the things that made it such a great travel palette was because it had the addition of that really great, nice, big mirror. So it made it really easy to sit there and do your whole face because, you know, there's that nice giant sized mirror there. So not only have they given you less variety, less shadows, but they've also taken out the mirror, which in effect has, you know, taken down the cost of the packaging, but I just kind of think the overall experience is kind of hindered by that just a little bit. So I do want to swatch these with you guys really quickly. We're going to start here and work our way over. So the first one we have is Get Down. So we'll start with this shade right here. This is a very, very shimmer heavy palette. So you only have, I think, 3 or 4 mattes in the entire palette. This is the duochrome that I was talking to you guys about earlier. It is a really pretty, I don't know if I'll be able to show that to you, but it's a really pretty icy shade, but it's got kind of like pinky. Yeah, it's definitely a duochrome. It shifts from a really pale champagne gold to like this bright, I want to call it magenta. It's like a purpley pink color. I wonder if I can get that to show up on, there we go. There's just a little bit of it. It's very, very pretty. It makes a beautiful highlight shade. I have this on my brow bone and inner corner today. Very, very pretty, but very, very sheer. You do kind of have to rub your brush in there to really pick up enough pigmentation to get it on the eye, but it's beautiful. It also works best when it's wet. Next, we have the shade Drip, which is this beautiful, like, gold bullion color, super bright, vivid yellow gold shade. That is really pretty. One of my favorite shimmers in the entire palette. Then you have this matte shade, and this is called Invite Only. And it's a deep chocolate matte, beautifully, beautifully smooth, super finely milled. It softly packed in the palette, so just be careful with that. I was a little aggressive with my brush at first and kicked up a whole ton of powder that I didn't need. So just be careful about that, but it goes on the eyes beautifully. I did use that shade on my eye today. I have that through, do I have that? Yeah, I have that through my crease. It blends beautifully. So the next row, we have the shade Tinsel, which is this slightly paler, a little bit more glittery golden shade. And this is absolutely beautiful. Super, super reflective, creamy, satiny kind of shimmer. Really, really pretty. Then we have the shade Platform, which is more of a mid-toned matte brown. This I have all over my transition area. It's a beautiful, beautiful eye contouring color because it's got that little bit of like a cooler undertone. So it makes a perfect like crease or transition color. So, so pretty. And then we have the shade Velvet Rope. Now, I have this one on my eyes today as well. I have this on the inner corner of my lid. This color is really, really pretty. I kind of want to show you. Doesn't it look so pretty on the finger? That's what it looks like swatched. If you guys can see what I mean, it is super, super glittery, but it is very, very sheer. It's got more of a like transparent base, and then it's basically just a bunch of pink glitter. It's very pretty and very reflective, but you have to use it wet in order to get any kind of payoff on the eye. I did try to use it when both dry and wet, and when I used it dry, it just was kind of putting a very light layer of pink glitter on my eye. So to really pick up that base, you definitely have to use a wet brush. I will demonstrate that for you guys in just a minute. The next one we have, the next row is smoking section, which is this one right here. It is a beautiful, beautiful, highly pigmented, glittery matte shade. I thought it was going to be closer to a black, but it's not. It's just a really deep, like blue toned charcoal gray. It is the prettiest color. It's got a really smoky blue gray undertone to it. It's really pretty. I have this on my eyes today as well. I have it in my outer corner just to kind of deepen everything up. It's beautiful, blended beautifully as well. I love the addition of the sparkle in there. Just kind of brings a little something extra to it. I actually thought this was a shimmer. And then when I dipped into it, I realized that it was just a matte with glitter in it. So that gives us 4 mattes total in the palette. Then we have Night Fever, which is this super deep, smoky, like cobalt blue, and it is very, very pretty. Super smooth, again, really, really finely milled. I find that the mattes in this palette are just absolutely incredible. Now, again, this is one of those things that I think they just look so, so similar. You probably could have put something different in here, given us a little bit more variety in the eyeshadow palette, because on the eye, they translate almost identical. When you blend them out, you really kind of lose that blue undertone because it is such a deep blue. It just kind of looks like dark smoke on the eye, which is beautiful, but it doesn't really translate to blue. And you can really do the same exact thing with both of these shadows and not see too much of a difference. Next, we have this gorgeous, gorgeous glittery sky blue. This is called Stellar. And this is a really, really pretty shimmer. It's got more of it's still got that translucent base. I think this one has a little bit more of a black base to it, but it's still super, super sheer. It kind of reminds me of like a starry night sky. You've got that deeper kind of black transparent sheer base, and then on top of it you have this really beautiful kind of glittery blue sheen. It's very, very pretty. Looks really pretty on the eyes. But again, I do wish that it was just a little bit thicker. It's a very, very thin shimmer formula. So again, you have to use it wet in order to get any kind of reflect out of it or true color payoff. So they're just a little bit finicky to work with. The last but not least, the last row, first we have Disco Dust, and I was really, really impressed with this shade. I just think it's so pretty. That's what it looks like on the finger. It is a gorgeously icy kind of, oh, it's so pretty. I want to be able to show that to you guys to the best of my ability. Let's swatch that again, but we'll do it lower so you guys can see a little bit better. There we go. So it's got a really beautiful reflect to it. Again, it is super, super sheer, best when used wet, but this is a topper shade for sure. So you could just tap this, use your finger dry, and tap this over just about any color in this palette, and it's just going to add sparkle and shine. It's a really, really pretty addition to this palette. Next, we have Disco Ball. Wait, what is this? Mirror Ball. And this is the prettiest, one of the prettiest shimmers in the palette. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous glittery silver. Can you guys see that? Still super, super sheer, but it has more of that silver base to it. It's not quite as glittery. This one is it's still glittery, but it's got a little bit more of that metallic base to it. So it looks a little bit more substantial on the eye. Very, very pretty. They look very similar in the pans, but I think swatched, you can definitely tell the difference. They're still both beautifully reflective, but I do think that I prefer this one just a little bit more. And then last but not least, we have a deep, dark black matte. This is called Last Call. Super, super rich, like Midnight Black. I was incredibly surprised by this black. It looks beautiful on the eye, blends out pretty well in my opinion too. I think overall it's a very, very pretty palette. So here are the swatches one more time. Overall, it is it's a neutral palette. It is a neutral palette with slight pops of pink and blue. But even then, I think the pops of color are still, my ear popped. They're still so sheer that I really don't think they make that much of an impact on the eye. I do have that pink shade on today, and I've had this eye look on for, I finished my eye and then I had to go make dinner. So I made dinner and then we sat down and ate. So I probably had it on for about maybe 2 or 3 hours now. And it has faded quite a bit. The pink was a bit more vivid than, you know, it is now. But overall, it's worn pretty well. But again, I've only had it on for like 3 or 4 hours. So that's not that big of a deal. The disco shade that I have right there in the center has definitely faded. So the long wearability of these shadows is not great. I think the mattes are wearing beautifully. It's just the shimmers that I'm finding I'm having a little bit of trouble with. So what I think is going to be best is using the shimmers with a wet brush and then maybe even putting down a glitter glue or something like that beforehand, just to really give them something to stick with. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to demo the palette. We're going to figure it all out. We'll use the glitter glue. We'll see, you know, we'll see what we can do with it. Overall, I think it's a beautiful palette, but for $20, because that's how much this goes for. I think this was around like $18 at my Walmart. I think overall you can find, as much as I love Milani, I feel like you can find better quality for $20. If the shimmers were just a little bit better, I would have different, you know, I'd have a different opinion for you. But because they're just not wearing very well, they're not very long wearing, I have experienced quite a bit of fallout with them as well. Like I said, we're going to try it with a glitter glue, see if that helps anything at all. But for right now, I'm just not super impressed with this palette. I think the color story is just a tiny bit repetitive, and I just think they could have done better. My favorite, my absolute favorite, see, these are all my Milani palettes. My absolute favorite Milani palette is the Gilded Terra. Where is that one? Gilded Terra. Yeah, this one. So my absolute favorite is the Gilded Terra. And as you guys can see, look how beautiful it is. Still overall a very neutral palette, but it's got pops of green and purple in it. It just is such a beautifully jewel toned and rich looking palette. And I think the shimmers in here are just, I mean, so much better. They're so much better. So that was the shade Glamping right here. Let's compare that to the gold shade, this one right here. So they look pretty similar, right? So this shade right here and this shade right here, they look pretty similar overall. But I just think that the formulation in the earlier palettes is a little bit better. They still look really, really nice. I don't understand why they couldn't have used this formula for all of the shimmers in this palette, because this gold has such a beautifully colored and bright base. You can tell the formula is a little bit thicker. It's got a little bit more body to it. I don't understand why they made the other shimmers in this palette so thin and glittery. They just don't have any stick to them. There's no body there. But if I could suggest to you a Milani palette, it would definitely be the Gilded Terra. I think it's phenomenal. My favorite Milani palette of all time. So this bad boy right here, we're going to start off with the mattes. We're going to start with the mattes and then kind of build from there. I am a little disappointed that there's only, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's only 4 mattes in here. I guess if we count this one with the glitter in it as a matte, there's 5 in here. What I can say is the mattes in here are gorgeous. We're going to start with the shade Platform. We're going to take that in the transition area and then go into Invite Only, that slightly deeper brown, and take that in to the crease. I'm going to use an e.l.f. Fluffy Blender. This is the e.l.f. Fluffy Crease Brush. And I'm going to very, very gently tap in to that light brown shade. I kind of want to show you guys the amount of, you see the fallout there? Like, you just have to be so careful. Can you guys see that? There is quite a bit of kick up in the pan. So just be careful when you're dipping into this palette, and I'm just going to take this right through my transition area. I already have my eyeshadow primer on. I am still using my Wet n Wild eyeshadow primer and absolutely loving it. But the thing about the Milani mattes is they're beautifully pigmented, but also beautifully buildable at the same time. So you can really go in and you can really customize the amount of intensity and the amount of pigmentation that you're looking for. I'm going to take this pretty high, not all the way to my brow, but pretty close. And again, it just goes on so smooth. I love this color. Brown, like mid-tone browns like this, I think are so pretty in the transition and crease area, just because they look like believable shadows, because there's that slight bit of cool undertone to it. So it just looks like a natural contour for the eye. You could definitely just use this color, stick it through the crease, pack one of the shimmers onto the lid, and be good to go. Really beautiful, super quick eye look for you. We're going to take it just a little bit further, just because I want to test out as many of the colors in here as I possibly can. Just going to put that through the transition. I'm going to leave the outer corner nice and messy. Then I'm going to go into a slightly smaller fluffy brush. This is a Profusion Small Fluffy Blender, and we'll go into that slightly deeper brown. This is called Invite Only. And again, a ton of kick up in the pan. So just be careful. Beautiful pigmentation on that as well. We're going to focus this on the outer corner of the lid, and then bring it through the crease to give our eye just a little bit of definition. Look, I mean, it's pretty much already blended. They are so thin. It's kind of the best part of a thin eyeshadow is they're effortless to blend. So I understand why companies formulate eyeshadows to be that way, just because it makes them so easy to blend. But because they're so thin, they really just don't stick to anything. They don't have enough body to really cling to anything. So unless you're setting them down on a tacky base, they just end up falling off the eye. And you're going to see with the shimmers that really is the case. Now, just these two colors together, they blend together beautifully. You could, at this point, stick anything on the rest of your lid and be good to go. I think they've blended together so beautifully and seamlessly. I love the mattes. I know I've already said that a million times, but I love the mattes so much. We're going to take this Dew Color. This is the Dew Color 12 brush. It is a teeny tiny detail blender. And we're going to go into this really gorgeous glittery gray. So smoking section. So this one right here. Again, very softly. I just tapped it in there and got all that product on my brush. And I'm going to put this on the outermost portion of my eyelid, my outer V, and I'm just going to use this for a little bit of depth and added definition on this outer portion. Very light pressure. Just kind of blending that into my outer V. And again, it's already blended. They are completely and totally effortless. But unfortunately, it makes up for that with the shimmers. So I'm going to go on, I'm going to try to show you what they look like going on dry, and then we'll use a setting spray. But they're just a little bit disappointing when you try to put them on dry. So for this outermost portion, I'm going to go into Mirror Ball, which is that gorgeous silver shade. I'm going to take my e.l.f., this is an e.l.f. concealer brush. It is just a flat packing brush. I probably ought to wipe this off a little bit because I can see the pink on there from earlier. So let's go into Mirror Ball. Get a good amount of it on my brush. And then try to pack it on the outer portion of my lid. Now you do get a slight bit of that color, but it's incredibly sheer. You can still see my eyelid through it, and there's really not much of a reflect there. There's just kind of the slightest sheen and a hint of color. So I'm going to do that same thing again. I'm going to get a good amount of it on my brush, and then I'm going to spray it with my NYX Bear With Me. And then I'm going to do the same thing. And already a million times better. Just packing it onto the center portion of my lid, slightly overlapping that darker shade just a little bit. I want to leave plenty of room for the pink though. Once you get them wet, they look so pretty. You can get a nice kind of opaque-ish lay down. It's still super sheer. It looks pretty opaque on my camera, but in real life, it's still pretty sheer. You can see my skin through it 100%, but it is very pretty. I'm just going to take the same brush, and I'm going to go into Velvet Rope now, which is that really pretty pink shimmer, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to show it to you dry first. And I do have a good bit of product on my brush. And I'm just going to press that on to the inner portion of my lid. And like I said, it is just the barest kind of hint of pink, the slightest suggestion of it. So to really make it shine and really bring forth that beautiful pink glitteriness, we're going to do the same thing we did with the silver. I'm going to get a good amount of it on my brush. I'm going to spray it with my spray, and then I'm going to pack it onto the inner portion of my eye. You do need to use quite a bit of product to really get a nice opaque laydown of color. But the finished product is so pretty. It's beautifully metallic without emphasizing texture in any way. It almost reminds me of like a satin metallic, because you've got that metallic sheen to it, but it's not really like it's not super shiny. It just has the softest kind of sheen to it with a little bit of a kind of glitter aspect to it. I don't know if you guys can see, but I do have a little bit of fallout on my cheeks. Just mostly glitter from these two shades, but overall I think they're really pretty. It is subtle. Even when you use it wet, it's gonna be subtle. It's not gonna be like a boom in your face color. This is a very subtle, very neutral palette. I think the boldest and loudest color in this entire palette is this gold right here. Definitely my favorite shade in the palette. I think that this duochrome is this duochrome is really pretty, but again, it's super fair and super sheer and subtle. So that's the lid pretty much done. I'm gonna take this AOA. This is my AOA E124. It is a small pointed pencil brush, and we're gonna go into that shade Get Down, which is the duochrome. And this one is just a little bit like harder to get out of the pan. Not hard panned or like hard pressed at all. It's just not quite as softly pressed as everything else. And I do have quite a bit of that on my brush. And I'm going to take that right underneath my eyebrow. And again, it takes quite a bit of product to really get this to show up. But I think it makes one of the most interesting kind of highlight shades, especially when you have such a neutral leaning eye and then you have this bright kind of duochromatic pop on the brow bone. I think it's interesting. Again, very subtle. Even the shift on it is pretty subtle, but you have this kind of champagne golden to pink shift that is very pretty and works well with everything we've got going on the eyes. I'm going to take a little bit of that same color and bring it onto my inner corner for an inner corner highlight. I'm going to top that inner corner highlight with just a little bit of disco dust, just because I really want that bright pop of iciness on the inner corner. And this one is a little bit more glittery, so it really brings the light to the inner corner. It's very pretty. So For the lower lash line, we're just going to keep it super, super simple. I want to keep this look nice and subdued, subtle. I feel like that's the vibe of the palette, so we're going to honor that. I'm going to go back in with that platform shade, which was that eye contour color, and we're just going to take that on a, what are we going to take that on? Let's take that on my e.l.f. eyeliner brush. This is just a flat, stiff kind of packing brush almost. We'll take that into that platform shade and just bring that along the lower lash line, just to give the lower lash line a little bit of definition. And it's beautiful. It goes on. It has great mobility. It does exactly what you want it to do without having to fuss and muss with it too awful much. Very, very pretty. I'm going to take the tiniest bit of that deep dark brown Invite Only and bring that on the outer portion of the lower lash line, just to kind of mirror a little bit of that depth on the lower lash line, and just fade that in towards the center of the eye. Just like that. And that is it, guys. Super simple, super, super easy. I think the palette works. I think that it takes just a little bit of extra effort to really bring it to its full potential. If you're looking for a bright pop of color, this is not the palette for you. If you are looking for something pretty but simple and subdued and just a little bit more subtle, I think this is a great option. Overall, if I had the choice, you know, if I had the option to buy this again or pass on it, I do believe that I would pass on this one specifically, just because I think that the shimmers need a little bit of work. I don't know. It's just really not doing it for me. I wish that the blues and the pinks were a little bit more vivid. I really wish it punched a little bit more. Everything's just very, very soft. And I know that is exactly what some people want. So if that's your thing, if you're looking for a beautifully soft, kind of natural looking eyeshadow palette, I think this is perfect for you. But if you're anything like me and really like that punch in the face of color, definitely skip on this. But that's what she looks like. I'm going to put a little bit of eyeliner on, some mascara. I will, of course, be posting finished pics over on Facebook and Instagram. The tags for all my other socials will be in the description box below, along with everything else that I talked about in today's video. Guys, I hope this was informative. I hope it was enjoyable to you in some small way. Guys, please know that I love you so, so very much. As always, no filters, no edits, no fancy lighting. It's just me sitting in front of my camera, playing with some new makeup, hoping you guys are enjoying what I'm doing. Until next time, my beautiful, amazing mamas, I love you so, so much. Stay safe, take care of yourselves, and remember, you're important. Bye.